1490 WERE. We have a great show lined up for you today. It's going to be a very interesting show because I have with me today two Africans. I think one was born on the continent of Africa and one was probably born here in the United States, but she has fully embraced her Africanness and she actually spends quite a bit of time on the continent of Africa. I'm learning more about her, but I'm going to have her introduce herself to you momentarily. I just want to let you know that there are a few things going on at Larchmere Arts this week. Namely, next Saturday, we're going to have a jam session, and we're going to invite folks from the community to come in and bring their instruments and their talents and poetry if you have some. So we're looking at having a good time, and I'm going to give you more details on that during the week. You can log in to Larchmere Arts on Facebook. You can also go to my personal page and you'll be able to get all of the details about that. So without that out of the way, I want to welcome my guest this morning. I have Brother Nana Kwesi Agyare. He is an extremely good friend of mine. He is an artist from the country of Ghana in West Africa, but now he lives here in the United States. And I also have Swatara Olushola, who I just met this morning through our good friends Kim Poole and Sister Yvita. She is going to be spending some time in Tanzania with a group of folks from America who are going to go there and enjoy the beauty and the grandeur of that magnificent place on the continent of Africa. She's connected with Tai Tours. Kim Poole is doing magnificent things with Tai Tours, and Sister Yvita is going to be leading a delegation of folks in October. I wish I could be on that journey. I'm looking forward to being there next year. So we'll talk about that and more as we continue. So first of all, Nana Agyare, you are a Ghanaian. You've been here a few times. You came back, I believe, in 2019, and you did an exhibition at the space over on Larchmere Arts. And since then, your work has been exhibited in so many places here in Cleveland. I think last week you actually opened an exhibition that's going to be up for some time. And we're looking forward to October of 2023 when you will be presenting your work at Larchmere Arts. So welcome to 360 Info Network once again.
Thank you, Vince. It's a pleasure being part of this once again. And also, I just want to say good morning to all your listeners and then the viewers out there.
All right. And Swatara Olushola, we need to learn more about you. So we know that you are connected with a project called Abundant Black Futures, and you're also a curator for Tai Tours. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Okay, well, I'm Swatara Olushola, and I actually relocated to the continent in the height of COVID in 2020. So my husband and I, at the time, we had 5 children. We left Texas and we went blind. We'd never been to the continent before. We went to Tanzania, and we lived in Tanzania for 2 years. And then after Tanzania, we expanded our interest there and included Kigali, Rwanda. And so now, currently, we reside in a small town called Nyamata, right outside of Kigali. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. That's where I was born and raised. I'm here visiting now on the Abundant Black Future Tour. And the Abundant Black Future Tour is in preparation for the Ujima East African Investment Tour. And this is kind of what I call a neo underground railroad. So, there's a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes that we have and know about the continent as Black people in America and vice versa. And so the only way we're going to undo that or debunk those myths is if we do it very intentionally. And so this tour is a part of that process in bringing us closer together and understanding one another better so that we can create relationships that are sustainable and beneficial for our communities on both sides of the water.
I'm glad to hear you put it in those terms. And just for the purposes of transparency, I reached out to Nana to be on the show this morning, and then maybe a day or so later, I got a call from Sister Yvita, and she wanted to promote what you're doing, and I'm absolutely all in favor of that. I thought it was really kind of ironic that I would be having a conversation with an African who has moved to America, and now I'm having a conversation with an African American who is now living in Africa. So we have two diametrically opposed ideas, but we have two very necessary things, because what happens with Nana being here in America is that he brings Africa to America for African Americans to experience, understand, and fall in love with. But on the other hand, you're someone who grew up here in America, I'm assuming, and then you relocated to the continent of Africa, and now you are experiencing the beauty and the joy of being in that place. So, what I want to accomplish with this broadcast today is to get perspectives of both from both of you on what it's like to patriate and expatriate, so to speak, and see what's in it for both sides. Because my experience in life and observing things about Africans who come to America and African Americans who go to Africa is there are very real similarities in some respects. So what happens with some African Americans who move to Africa is they move in the interest of economy. And I heard you say you were involved in investing in the continent of Africa. So I would assume that there is a certain financial aspect to that. We go to Africa, our money goes farther. We're able to live our retirement years and in a nice sunny place, and enjoy life because of the fact that we can live more economically. But on the other side of things, you have Africans who come to America, and for whatever reason, many of them isolate themselves in their own cliques, just like African Americans who go to Africa do the same thing. They may not necessarily be engaged in the community and so forth and so on. So I just want to get perspectives from both of you on what it's like for you, Swatara, for you to be an African American living in Africa and having been there long enough to get past the romanticized idea of being in Africa and dealing with certain realities of being an African American in Africa, and Nana, Kwesi, you being here in America and dealing with the stereotypes of Africans in America and so forth and so on. So we got a lot to unpack here, and I hope you'll bear with me as we have this conversation. So, Swatara, since you're new to our relationship, so to speak, I want to ask you what it's like for you to be an African American living in Africa and getting past the culture shock and what happens when they look at you and they see that you look like an African, and then when you speak, they understand that you're not necessarily from there, right there. How do things change for you as you live there and become acculturated to what it's like to live in Africa?
So when we went initially, I had no expectations. I was raised in the African centered environment. My name was given to me at birth. I was always taught to love Africa and love myself and love African people, and that I was an African person. Malcolm X said, just because a cat has kittens in the oven, that doesn't make them muffins. That means that just because my ancestors had babies in America, that doesn't mean I am American. I am of African ancestry. And, scientifically, if you test my DNA, it's going to take you back to Cameroon. And so that's who I am. That's what I've always known. But I never had no adults in my community or even myself. My parents never took me. Going to Africa was never something that was made practical in my upbringing. And it was always talked about as if Africa was, really far away. and like just a huge undertaking to visit or go. And it just wasn't a part of the conversation, even in an African-centered environment. And so I never really thought about going until my children presented it to me, because I was raising them the same way. And they said, well, we love Africa so much. We celebrate Kwanzaa, we have these names and we do these things, we dress this way. How come we never go? And we didn't really have a good answer for that. So we said, let's go then, because I don't want to make that same mistake. And not really a mistake, but just do things the same way they were done with me. I want to take it a step further, right? And so I went with no expectations. I just knew that I needed to ensure that I was not viewing myself and I was not viewing the continent through the lens of our enemy, through the lens of our oppressor, right? Through the lens of someone who or whatever entity is in existence who embedded the stereotypes in the first place, right? And so I had to do away with some of the ideas that I had subliminally that I didn't even realize I had. And I had to know that African people are global, and that includes my community in America, that includes my community in the UK, that includes my community in Ghana, that includes my community in Rwanda, wherever we are, wherever African people are, Brazil, right? We are everywhere. And as an activist and organizer, I fight for my people wherever we are. And so it's easy for me to see us as one. And in going there weren't as many culture shocks as I thought there would be. But that's just because of the kind of person I am. I adapt, and I knew that whatever problem I ran into or whatever shock I ran into on the ground on the continent, nothing could be worse than racism and police brutality. So I was ready to go up against anything, and nothing I've experienced has come close to that. I went, we've been gone for 3 years, and in 3 years, I haven't had to navigate microaggressions and, Karening and brats and having to have to talk with my boys like, oh, if you leave out the house, if you run into a police officer, then you have to do this, this, and this to make it home alive. I would give anything for that. I wouldn't. Nothing can come close to having that level of peace of mind. And I find that on the continent. But beyond that, and I'll let Brother Nana talk on this, but I know that our brothers and sisters from the continent come to America many times for education or economic stability. And I don't judge that. I don't. I do think that it's important for them to get the full picture and know the full scope of what they'd have to deal with coming here, so that they aren't surprised or endangered in any way. And I also think that I heard what you said about the cliques happening. And I think that happens naturally. If you're from Ghana and you go somewhere, or you're from Ivory Coast and you go somewhere and see that there's other people from the Ivory Coast there, you're naturally going to come together. But it's also important for us to see ourselves as one. That's where our power lies, in that unity.
Yes. That's a great answer. And since you brought it up, I want to shift over to Nana and ask him about what it was like for him to come to America, what his perception of it was versus the reality of it was, and talk about your acculturation in the United States. Because I know when you came, Nana, you hit the ground with your feet running. And, within days of being here, you had already set up an exhibition, and you've gone from that to setting up several others. And so it's not like you're letting the moss grow under your feet, so to speak. But she raised some really interesting perspectives in what she just shared with us. So what has it been like for you to be here in America, and what was your motivation for coming?
Well, Vince, thank you again. Well, it all started 4 years ago, after my exhibitions in Africa and also in Dubai. And I was thinking of expanding myself because in Africa, main challenge that we face has to do with economy and then also bad leadership in Africa. Because when you look at Africa, we are so blessed with natural resources. So there's no way that Africa should suffer or Africans should be in need. But due to poor leadership, due to mismanagement of properties and natural resources, that has really led Africa to where we are now, and always on our knees begging for alms. And so I think I told you before, I was detained because I said Africans, we don't have leaders, we have managers. They just come to manage our natural resources and then they leave the people poor, and sometimes even poorer than the way they were before they came in power. So I wrote about this, and then may his soul rest in peace. The late Jerry John Rawlings, detained me for 24 hours just because I was so blunt with my words. I didn't beat about the bush about anything. I made it so clear because I made a point like, why should you encourage the young people, the young folks to move from the streets to go into farming, and then yet you import rice from China? That's very, very ironic because nothing really makes sense. How can you tell me to go into farming and then you import rice from China? So who's going to eat my rice? So a lot of issues like this came up, and then I put it there and I was detained. So fast forward, when I started doing my shows, and I realized that, look, if I really want to make an impact in life, I don't think I need to stay in Africa. I really need to move out of Africa because art in itself is not a commodity for Africans, because we don't even cherish what we have, though we have it there. And this funny thing I know about life, that sometimes when you are in a compound or something, like you have all these beautiful things around you, you don't cherish it, apart from people who move from the other side, who don't have that privilege to see those things. They rather end up appreciating it. So I went to Dubai, and after Dubai, I went back to Ghana again, and I met a friend who was so interested in art, and he said, look, I love your art. I really want you to get involved in this business. And I said, okay, no problem. Then there was the year of return in 2019 in Washington, and we wanted to do the same thing in Cleveland, so that at least it will be like, it's not only, the focus is not only on Washington, but then also in other part of America. So my friend and I and you then got involved, and lo and behold, I got here. Again, I think getting here for the first time, I was so naive, but though I've read a lot about America, but then I didn't actually read a lot about like Cleveland in states in general, but I did a general overview of America. So when I got here, I knew about the gun-related issues. I know about the stereotypes issues, and the other side of Africa, telling the bad story of Africa. A whole system was kind of upside down. So my first idea was not even to run with the artwork, but my first idea was just to change the narrative, the story, all over the news that Africans are eating. You see flies around their face and, their lips. So my whole idea was to re-educate the people and let them know that, hey, I'm here not because Africa is, excuse my French, Africa is in a poor state, but it's just because I needed also for you to know that as long as you're an African, you need to go to Africa to experience certain things, though we lack certain things, basically because of our perspective. What you're looking at, if you are looking for good food, good environment, good atmosphere, like living life like a real life, not being oppressed, being, pushed to do certain things, and, like you're so constrained, you don't have your freedom to do whatever you wanted to do. I am actually challenging you that Africa, when you get to Africa, you get to eat raw food, real organic food. You get a space to move, do things. The police are not chasing you. You're not facing any brutality. There's no issues of colors. We embrace each and every one. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. Africa is a place where we embrace everybody. We welcome everybody. And that's why when you get to Kotoka International Airport, now you see the big post, welcome, Akwaba. It's because we, don't discriminate. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So I try to do this in changing the mindset of people. And I also didn't want to do this kind of European artworks because of culture exchange. So I started doing more of African artworks, let people see the other side of everything. And so forth. I think it depends the person who is actually talking, or what you're feeling, or how you want to present the whole scenario. Just like sisters, Sarita, you said, you want to go back because you've heard so much about Africa, but you've never experienced Africa based on veins. When you take like about $100, that can take you a whole week to feed yourself. But over here, it's just a matter of just like a flip of my fingers and it's gone. You don't need to buy. You just walk into a place, a restaurant. By the time you walk out of there, you paid almost about $50, plus your tips. In Africa, it's not even an option. You can tip or not to tip. And you buy food, raw food, you don't eat processed food. So it depends. Who the person who is talking. I am here basically because I needed to make sure that I make some money, because of the currency problem. So I needed to make sure that what I do get to a certain point or a certain peak of life where I can influence people, I can encourage people and let them understand that art also has a real life. So in a nutshell, I think it depends on the individuals. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So we've gotten two divergent opinions. But what I heard you say was that your reason for coming to America was primarily economic. And for many who go to Africa to live, it's primarily economic. So we have the same motivation in certain ways. I'm also told that, and I want you to confirm or deny this if it was your experience, but many Africans who come to America are dissuaded from connecting with African Americans because they're told so many negative things about us. We carry guns, we're violent people, we're criminals and all those other kinds of things. Was that your experience at all?
Listen, this is the case. This thing has been going on for years, ages. Let me put it this way. Traveling from Africa, like from one African country to the other country is even more expensive than traveling from Africa to Europe, any part of Europe. This is the reason why. The reason is because the mindset is to divide Africans. And that is the motive, no matter what it is. These people should never come together. That is it. So the mindset is that the story about Africans to Americans is totally opposite from what you will experience in Africa. And the stories they tell us in Africa when you come here is totally opposite. That is the first thing I noticed. The second thing I also noticed is that sometimes when the Blacks also travel to Africa, they also want to see themselves as superior over the Africans living there because they think, well, we come in, we have the resources, we know, what we are, you want to come to America. So they ride at the back of some of the Africans over there. When I come here, I sometimes experience that. But the truth is, look, Vincent, it is all about individual motive or individual perception about life. I have never experienced a black guy with a gun pointing me or maybe somewhere shooting anyhow. Rather the opposite. You know, I heard about there was this on downtown when somebody just pulled a gun and shooting, you know, anyhow, and nobody, you know, could trace the person. I think it's about time we tell our story ourselves. You know, we don't live on trees. We don't live, you know, in fact, to be honest with you, it was here that I saw deer crossing the streets and wild goose and all those things, wild turkeys all around the streets in Africa. Vince, you can witness to that. Did you even see like, you know, a turkey or some on the streets? No. We live with domestic animals like, you know, like a cow, goats, chickens. Yes, because we want them to grow in their natural environment and natural state so we can enjoy pure organic food, not processed food, you know, to the bed. So the bed will look so huge, full of fat, you know, and nothing. But we eat chicken, you know, like real fowl right from the streets. You know, you carry live. The family, you see kids running after, you know, like a bird just because they want to get that bird for the soup. And that is how we need to, you know, change things up. Again, I have a certain mindset that, look, if Africans are going to come together, even over here where we live, if we can come together, create a community on our own, build a certain estate on our own, where maybe 2 or 3 people who are worthy Africans living there, let's buy a mower. Let's mow all the lawns for each and other people. Let's do it together with a certain mindset that, look, we are together. In Ghana or in Africa in general, you see tall walls. All the houses are full of walls, but we are very close. In America, we don't have walls, but we are far from each other. I don't even understand this kind of logic. I mean, I've tried so many times to find out what is the mindset. What is the psychological brain behind the whole thing? I don't understand. We are all human. And so why all this, you know, frictions among ourselves? Why are we doing what we're doing to ourselves? When we, as a matter of fact, we have a very short life to live on this earth and leave. So why don't we tell the truth to our youth, to our upcoming children? Like, for instance, just like Sister said, she was compelled to go to Africa because of the kids. And now she even doesn't want to leave Africa. That is how it's supposed to be. Who is there to take that bold steps? Who? That is one thing. All of us, we talk. We are so bold to talk. But when it comes to the real action, we are all wearing skirts. The men are all wearing skirts because nobody's ready. And then we pull our tails in between our ties and we talk and talk and talk. Enough of their speech. Enough. Right. It's about time. Who is ready? Are you afraid to die? To speak the truth? And that is why nobody wants to speak the truth? And then we value ourselves like, oh, you know, I'm a coward. Yes, you're a coward. But then a coward doesn't mean that you can't speak. It means you tread cautiously. Speak the truth. If that's the truth, speak the truth. Let them kill you because speaking the truth definitely will hurt somebody. They will come after you, but speak the truth.
So when you talk about speaking the truth, you're talking about a narrative. And what Sister Swatara is doing is she is creating another opportunity to change that narrative. And the narrative is about repatriation. So Sister Swatara, I want to ask you, talk to the folks about why it's important for them to consider not only visiting Africa to see what it's all about, but going there with the intention of possibly relocating there as you have done and getting a different perspective on life.
Sure. So I want to be clear that I am not trying to persuade people to move to Africa. I'm not. I am saying that as African people in other parts of the world, if you have not been to Africa to merely visit, then you need to go. Going to Africa and standing on the soil is an investment in yourself. That is something, if you have the resources to do so, and many of us do, we just don't realize it, then that's something that you should absolutely consider. And then we don't want to come or even live in the States and see ourselves as anything more than our brothers and sisters on the continent, right? And I'm sorry that Brother Nana has had that experience with some people, but I've even seen it myself among brothers and sisters, and vice versa. Dress in traditional attire. I've always done that. And so people see me and assume I was born and raised on the continent. And then when I start to speak, then they see otherwise. And I have, in some instances, got really negative reactions to that. But luckily I am who I am, and nothing can ever separate me from my people. I know we have work to do, and I know that I'm here on divine assignment. I also think it's important for us not to blame ourselves for this condition that we're in, because then that absolves those who are responsible and who worked hard for us to have a relationship like this that is divided. But we are closing that division. But where it stands now, it's not our fault, but it is our problem to solve. And so we are working to do that. The Berlin Conference happened. And when the Berlin Conference happened, and all those Western and European entities sat down and divided Africa and its resources for themselves to sustain their nations for generations, we were left out of that conversation, right? And so now we have a global African community where our brothers and sisters from the continent feel they need to go somewhere else to be economically empowered when all of the resources are on the continent. So where is the value of those resources going? Where is that being routed? And our brothers and sisters who aren't on the continent feel stuck where they are, and they don't feel economically empowered when the continent that they are from, that their ancestral ties are to, sustains literally the rest of the world. So where is the break there? So while we're being told lies about the continent and our brothers and sisters on the continent, and then our brothers and sisters on the continent are being told lies about us and lies about the continent itself and its value, to the point where the resources are devalued and the education system is devalued, so that now there's an open lane in the middle for everybody else to come in and get what they want. And they come in and set up their mining operations, and they come in and build their businesses, and they come in and find locals to marry and have children with, and raise their children to speak the language and bring in all of their brothers and sisters from China and India and whatever nation they hail from, and build businesses together and send that money back to China and India from Africa. Meanwhile, we are submerged in mistruth. And it for so long has caused us to be in this delusional mental state. And so going to the continent initially wipes your mind of all the misconceptions you had initially. So you can't think that all of our brothers and sisters in Africa are living, destitute and poor and in huts, and then you land in an airport in Africa. Like, how is an airport here if everybody's destitute? Where did these resources come from? And then you drive to your next location or your hotel. How is there a Marriott here if everyone is poor and destitute? So now your brain is having these misconceptions broken up. But like I said in the beginning, these kinds of stereotypes that keep us divided, even the other way around, thinking that all Black people are violent or all Black people are whatever you see on TV, that they allow to be shown in whatever country you're in. There is a certain false narrative that they need us to believe about ourselves and each other so that they have a clear path in. And so it's our job to undo that. Going back to the continent as an African American or African in the UK or the Caribbean or wherever you might be is a part of our work. Now, I know everyone doesn't want to go. Everyone, doesn't feel that obligation to stand on the land. And that's okay too. I know we're all in different places, but that doesn't mean you can't have a connection with the continent. How can you do that from where you are? This is how. We know that there are communities of continental African people in every other country, right? There are African people who relocated to South America, relocated to North America, relocated to Canada and the UK and other parts of the world. Connect with them. There's no wall or law against us speaking to one another. Connect with them. Even our Black Power African Center organizations. We have these organizations, they've been in existence for 50 plus years, but we don't have realistic connections with our African brothers and sisters. And I'm not talking about merely, sending money to Africa and saying we're going to open a computer lab here. I'm talking about everyday, real relationships, knowing names, speaking to one another, doing business together on this side of the water, right? And doing business together on the other side of the water to sustain our communities, to sustain our organizations, to sustain ourselves as a global African community. We shouldn't be asking anybody for anything, ever.
That's so true. And I want to talk to you about Abundant Black Futures and also talk to you about your role as a curator for Tai Tours.
Yes.
We've been joined by Antonio, who is the creator of this radio show, and just want to get his perspective on the idea of repatriation. I know he and I talk about that at length on this radio program. So I'm sure that he's listened to you intently, and he has a few things that he wants to share as a result of our discourse. So, Antonio, your mic is muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now.
All right, and good morning to both of you guys. And I think it's a needed conversation, and like Brother Vince said, it's something that we talk about, and I go throughout the community talking about all the time. So it's a conversation that definitely is needed. And when the brother talked about the mindset, that's what we have to understand. See, most of our people don't think about is during the course of slavery that was taking place over here in this country, they make it seem like Africans was at the beach having a good time. But the same thing that was going on even before we was brought over here, things was going over in Africa. You know what they said? They had the land, and Europeans had the Bible, and then flip flop after they came and explored Africa. So it's been rebellious things going on here that they don't talk about. There's been rebellions going on in Africa they don't talk about. And we know for a fact, I was once married to an African woman, that they are told negative things about us and they show us negative imagery about them. So, this is a mindset that has to be addressed. There's conferences and sit downs that we need to do. And I would just hope, though, and I do see some of the Africans on the continent as well is wising up to what's been going on. So the question is, what is the common denominator that is causing this friction and this problem and this disconnect? Let's start looking at the common denominator. Who's been involved and caused this separation? That's what we need to start getting wised up about. I was hoping that the internet would, like the one sister would say, solve some of these problems, rather than us using the internet to show our discord and some of the craziness that's going on to the whole world. But the internet has made the planet smaller, where you can make those connections and dispel all those myths about our people in different parts of the world. But some of us want to use it for some silliness and craziness rather than using it for something constructive and connecting the dots and businesses and things like that to empower ourselves. So I think our salvation, as far as Black folks is concerned, is that connection. Even if you decide not to live there, at least think about carving out a little piece of the pie. I've been championing that cause forever. We have to at least do that. And because we tend to follow everybody. So you see that everybody's over there scrapping and grappling for Africa. When are we going to see it? When it comes in commercials on TV, come back to Africa, then that's when we're going to wipe the coal from our eyes and talk about doing something in Africa. By that time, it's too late to get in any ground stage investment. You got to get in there early, and you got to have vision. That's what some of the damaging things, as far as our people is concerned, is vision. So, this is a needed conversation. I'm glad our audience had this. We had a chance to hear it from somebody else other than us preaching about it all the time. And I'm telling you, this is something that is needed. And I wish you brothers and sisters, that's on the show with us today to keep the charge up, keep talking about it and letting our people know. And also the brothers on the continent that keep their culture, don't give up their culture. Don't let the westernized trinkets and things of that nature get in the way of fooling you to believe that this system is the system that you want and give up you have it on the continent and learn your history about yourself.
Okay. So I want to segue back to Sister Swatara and talk about the experience that you are curating for those of us who are on this side of the world who go to Africa to see what it's about. Talk about the Tai Tours experience.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. So I call myself a solutionary. So just like we listed, all these problems and realities that we have as a people, we also need to address those. And whatever area of expertise we have, it should address some of our problems in some way. And so, living there and going there, I didn't just say, okay, I've arrived, I'm free and now I'm done. No, not at all. I continued the work, the same community work I did here in the States. I continued it there. And through technology, was able to continue a lot of my initiatives here as well. And so born out of us moving there and seeing that divide and seeing the need for, what needed to happen for us to progress forward as a people, my husband and I sat down and we sat with Sister Kim and we came up with the Abundant Black Future Tour. And so the Abundant Black Future Tour is me going around. I've been to several different cities and I have a few more to go, talking to our people very candidly, very directly, incorporating some art, and making our message very clear so that people know the benefit of our relationship with our brothers and sisters on the continent and vice versa, and have a clearly defined path forward, not only for ourselves individually, but for our communities, our communal entities, and our organizations. Every other nation on the planet sustains themselves with resources from the continent, except the African community. And so we are outlining a path to sustaining ourselves, and not in a pyramid scheme kind of, we're not selling anything. This is us giving the information and giving the keys. It is not live streamed because it's a very intimate and candid conversation that I know several entities would not want us to have. And so I'm going to, all of the places that will have me while I'm here. I'm here for 1 month, and I'm giving the information to our people and giving us a clear path forward for those who have a mind to activate that. And so we are in preparation for the Ujamaa East African Investment Tour. And that is born out of entity that my husband and I created. We wanted to create companies that could facilitate the process for those who want to invest in the continent, for those who want to relocate. And we've been talking about the continent in kind of a monolithic way on this particular call, but it's a big place, family. It is 54 countries. And so we say Africa, but when we say Africa, you know, we're talking about a really vast and diverse landmass. In Tanzania alone, there are 120 tribes and 120 different languages spoken, and that's in one country. But that's something you learn coming over here on the ground and seeing for yourself. Another important piece of that is if you're coming here, is to honor that country and those people by learning that local language. If you know you're coming, for example, to East Africa, when we made the decision to come here, I immediately started to learn Kiswahili to the point now that I'm really, really close to fluency. I would say about 80%. But that needed to happen because then you're able to connect to more of your people and you're able to connect to them in a way, you're able to meet them where they are and connect to them in a way that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. You're able to have conversations that you otherwise wouldn't be able to have only knowing English, you know, and it's really common for us in America to only know English and then go other places and expect everybody else to know English. And that's just not the reality. It limits us. So I say at least learn Spanish, French, Kiswahili. If you know Spanish, French, and Kiswahili, you'll be able to communicate with pretty much all African people in the world on the planet. But October 11th through the 22nd, we're taking a group of people who are interested in investing in the continent, not necessarily relocating, but they have that option as well. We'll be taking them to Tanzania, Kenya, and Rwanda to see some business entities that our continental brothers and sisters have there. And also some of our brothers and sisters who relocated from the UK and from America who relocated there and established businesses. We're able to see those, see how we can be involved. Or if you want to start a business of your own or get land or whatever you have in mind, you'll be able to research and explore that on the ground within, you know, some real live cultural exchange during the Ujamaa East African Investment Tour. So you can find out more about that at investinakibaland.com. That's our website for Akiba Land Investments, also a sponsor of this Abundant Black Futures Tour, where I'm letting people know the way, a path to liberation in a very practical sense. And so I'm really proud to be doing that and bring all of this information to my people here on the ground. I'm happy that you opened your platform for me to further share this.
Sister Swatara, could you talk about what some of those investment opportunities might be? Tell us what kinds of things folks are investing in.
Okay, so I'm going to say this first. Manufacturing. I can't say that enough. It is definitely a void in many of the places on the continent that I've been and seen. So, for example, and I don't even think this is the case anymore, but it was the case for a long time. So in some areas of West Africa, they would grow cacao, right, to make chocolate. And they would grow it and harvest it in its raw form. But there were no facilities or like major manufacturing to process that cacao into chocolate that was ready to be sold. And that just doesn't apply to cacao. There's other crops that will be grown and then shipped out to other countries, Europe and America, China, you name it. And it would go to these other places and then they would process it and manufacture it into a product to be sold and sell it back. So I grew the cacao. I shipped it to Switzerland to become chocolate, and now they're known for chocolate from cacao from Africa. And then they ship their chocolate back to me to be sold at an exponential rate. And so I'm going to say that manufacturing is a huge opportunity. Packaging, things like toilet paper, wrappers on snacks or drinks, labels, things like that. You can win because that is a void. We're bringing in packaging from China. They're able to charge what they want because they're the only ones bringing it in. Nobody on the ground is manufacturing that. Even electronics, solar panels. The opportunities are vast because the countries that we have experience in and that we are taking you to are at a certain level of development where you can get in early. For example, in Rwanda, they're building a brand new international airport, and it's going to change the game for intracontinental travel inside of Africa from country to country, because that's another issue. That's a way to divide the continent, making travel from Rwanda to Ghana difficult, or Ghana to the DRC difficult. So this airport is going to change that, and it's going to change that area. So right now it's all empty farmland around that area, agricultural land. So if somebody were to get in now, and some people are, and some people got in last year, just get in a plot of land. They've already seen the value triple, and the airport is not even built yet. It'll be done in 2026. So say you get in now and put a small lodge or apartment building or a restaurant or anything right there in that proximity. Think about your local international airport. Think about when it was only agricultural land, when they were just thinking about building that airport, and all of the entities that got in early then. That's where we are in that specific area in Rwanda. So that's a huge opportunity there. And then, of course, cash crops, animal husbandry. And this is not something you have to be on the ground to do. You can come set it up and then empower the local people, provide them salaries so that they're able to provide for their families to keep the business up and running. And so, these are things that we're going to show participants on the ground. And I really just scratched the surface of that, but I don't want to take up all the time from the whole show. And then I also have to get to the Detroit event today. But there are an immense number of opportunities. And then we're also expanding the idea of what investment looks like, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to look like me coming with a large sum of money to give an entity or to start something myself per se, but it also looks like investing in the people, investing in the future, in the youth, right? So in Gashora, Rwanda, we have the Nzozi Learning Center that we started. And working with the children is unmatched because a lot of these stereotypes get embedded early. So at the Nzozi Learning Center, our very first day, I asked the children, do you know why we're here? We have 450 children enrolled there, and this is in an extremely rural area in Gashora, Rwanda.
Okay.
You can look it up at the Nzozi Learning Center, thenzozicenter.org.
Okay.
But I asked the children, I'll say this quickly, do you know why we're here? And one of the children said, yes, I know why we're here. We're here so that we can learn to read and we can learn English. And I said, well, not quite. We're not here just to teach you English.
Okay. I gotta have to have you wrap up right now because we have about 1 minute and 30 seconds left.
Okay.
On the radio broadcast, and we can continue the conversation because I know you got to run to another event, but we can go for maybe 15 minutes after we conclude this broadcast. So for those who are listening, I want to thank you for joining us, and I also want to welcome Nana back into the conversation because he's been sitting on the sidelines, and I know he's been taking it in, and he's got things that he wants to say. I also want to acknowledge the fact that this is one thing that the leadership of Ghana got right. They went to Switzerland and they said, we're not going to continue
Exactly.
to give you our cacao, because they realize that it's important to manufacture it and not just be exploited in terms of that resource. So I really thank you for that perspective. And I thank those of you who have been listening and watching on StreamYard, Facebook, and YouTube for joining us today. Glad that our host, Antonio, was able to join us and contribute to the conversation. And we're going to continue this dialogue on the streaming platforms. Also, I want to acknowledge our engineer, Tone Harley, for coordinating all of this and making it possible. So, as with that said, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day, Cleveland and the rest of the world. Peace.
Peace.
All righty. So we are logged off on AM 1490 WERE, but we're continuing this conversation. I mentioned what I mentioned about Ghana and cacao. I also want to lift up the idea of an airport being built in Ghana in a place called Kamenda. It is going to be one of the largest cargo airports on the continent of Africa, and definitely the largest cargo airport in the country of Ghana. I'm also mindful of what's going on in Niger right now. They're building a pipeline for natural gas from Africa to Europe. And the Nigerians are saying, hey, you know, we're not going to get a benefit from this pipeline going through our country. We don't think that it's a good idea for you to continue on this path to exploitation. So what we're seeing on the continent is some of these walls being broken down. Just recently, the government of Kenya advocated for eliminating the requirement for visas. We're also seeing some of the barriers for trade between different countries in Africa being broken down so that they don't have to go to Europe on their way to a neighboring country. Nana, you talked about the detainment, and you talked about perspective on the front end of our conversation. What are your observations about things changing with respect to leadership and Africans standing up for themselves on a worldwide stage right now?
Well, Vince, I think it's a waking up call to our leaders and also our elders, because I think the youth have been suppressed for a very long time, and they think that when they put their lives into the hands of our elders, thinking that they'll be able to make something good, you know, for them and then their generation, they realize that they always let them down. So based on that, I think there's a big transformation going on in Africa currently as we speak. The government is always, you know, on its toes because the youth are always putting fire, you know, and I mean positive fire, not, you know, like in terms of negative something, but then making sure that they are always on their toes to take a good decision for the youth, especially. I think it's a very good thing that is going on because a clear example is Rwanda. I mean, that's a very awesome leader, brilliant leader by all standard. If you should go to Rwanda, I mean, a country that years back was razed totally to the ground, and currently when you get there, you'll be so amazed about what is going on over there. I mean, at the point in time, you might think you are even in Europe. You know, you might think you are in Europe. You know, when you're lazy, he fired you from his office. There is nothing like family favoritism or, you know, no, nothing of that sort. And I think that is what we cry out for. So now I think the youth are also taking life into their hands in the sense that they are doing something positive with their lives rather than relying on politicians to, you know, enhance their lives. And that is actually changing the whole country. Now, a lot of young guys are into industries, you know, they are into manufacturing, just like you said. Now, what we do is that because, like, just like Sister said, we don't have a lot of companies, like manufacturing companies in Africa. So this is what most of the young guys do. They do what we call what's the name? Free labor, sort of work. So they go to China. So for instance, they go there, they go with a product sample of the product that they wanted it to be packaged. So they take it to China, and China package it for them. They put their labels over there, and then they do it. And currently, that is what a lot of young folks are doing. They sell baby diapers with their branded, into their names, and companies are, expanding into it. Now there's a rubber plantation, which is very good, and that is what I'm doing now. I'm into rubber plantation now. I have 10 acres, and that is what I'm doing. It is difficult because this is somebody who is an artist who doesn't know nothing about rubber plantation, and we need kind of skills. So I think also another side is that I think the government should take up and then train a lot of young guys, to partake this kind of initiative, because that is what is actually going to enhance their lives and also going to benefit the country, otherwise with the tax and then investors coming into the country. Because once the local people run their own business and they run it very well, I mean, definitely the Europeans are being compelled not to come there and farm, but they are coming there not also to buy the raw material, but actually they're going to buy the product. So if I'm doing, for instance, if I'm doing the rubber plantation, I need somebody who also established a factory that can turn the rubber plantation into something else. So like, for instance, you can start doing your disposable cups, plastic bowls out of the rubber plantation. And so you realize that it's a chain. That's what I call a change, a chain, a supply chain, where the supply chain goes in from one point to the other. So I don't do rubber plantation, and there's no company that is going to turn my raw material into a product. So my raw material is going to sit down there and get spoiled. I mean, and I'm going to be at it's me who's going to lose. So the best thing to do is that I think the government should also go into industries, just like Sister said. I mean, it's the main thing, because also going to generate work, youth employment for the youth. And then they would not go on the streets, begging for for food to eat, and loitering around as if they don't have a future. These are human, futures. I mean, these are human capacity. We can use them to build the country. That's the same way that they picked us from where we are in our comfort zone to build America. The same thing we can also do there and build our country without depending on anybody. How can you drill oil and you don't have experts? And that's what Dubai has been able to do. Dubai actually train their people. They take their people outside. They spend years. I told you about this, Vince. They spend years training, building themselves, smart ones. And then when they finish, they bring them back, pay them well. Build this, what you've learned, build it, let's see. And they pay them well. So they are not even compelled to go back to Europe because they are being paid well. And their skills that they've applied, they are using it in their country. So the country is developing and they have a target. So again, Africa, what is our target? What are we aiming at? What's our main focus? Are we taking agriculture to be the best in the whole world? That when we talk about agriculture, like we talk about food crops and everything, the first name that will come up is Africa. Do we have that? Or when we talk about gold, does it mean that, look, Africa is full of gold? Let's do it. Let's take a target. And let's stop these barrier issues among ourselves. West Africa, I should be able to travel to Nigeria without a passport. I don't see the reason why. Should I travel to South Africa and go and queue? I mean, I don't see the reason why I should do that. And then an American person with American passport can just be roaming about in Africa freely. And me, that African, cannot travel to my own neighbor, my next door country. I mean, we should stop all these things. We should stop it. The resources in Africa, the natural resources in Africa, should benefit Africans first, before any other person.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sure.
Swatara, I know that you're connected with finance in light of the fact that you're involved in education. And one of the big things that's going on right now is this idea of de-dollarization. So you have another number of African countries that are lining up with the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're having a summit in South Africa this month. It might actually be within the next week or so. It might be going on right now. I'm not apprised of the exact dates for it, but one thing that is I guess gaining momentum is this idea of not being in bed with the West as much as you have in the past. You have Russia that is influencing African leadership to engage in this idea of de-dollarization and supporting them, like they're supporting them in Niger right now. So I'm just wondering about the idea of cryptocurrency, how that is changing things for those Africans who are not banked right now. They're characterized as unbankable, but with these alternative currencies, they're able to engage in commerce and even building wealth and resources. What are your thoughts about cryptocurrency and the role that it's playing in economic empowerment for Africans?
For Africans in
Yeah.
general, like I
Yeah.
said, Africa is a big place. So cryptocurrency also, is playing a different role in different countries. So we're based in East Africa. That's your Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, Ethiopia. And I'd say that cryptocurrency and the idea of it is a bit more advanced in the larger countries. So Tanzania and Kenya for sure are taking advantage of that. But places like Rwanda, it's not non-existent, but it's at the beginning. So this is why I say, and this is why I'm excited that the tour is happening now at this point in development. But this is why, I say to come here and get on the ground yourself and forge these relationships and educate our people on the ground on the continent, and adversely ourselves and immersing ourselves in these economies, because we're not used to being in countries and operating, even from a financial standpoint, in a country that is run by African people. Like that alone, especially in a place like Rwanda, like the brother said, where the government prioritizes the people and their well-being on the ground, and that includes economic status. And so having that new experience here and knowing that our people are waking up, and I believe that cryptocurrency is a large part of that. And for our brothers and sisters on the ground in the States, I think that the life of the US dollar is limited, and that you should prepare an alternative, whatever that means for you. That could be cryptocurrency, and that can also look like having assets in another country, in another currency. And so I think that that is definitely a way to hedge and protect your dollar that you have right now. But I cannot speak on the life of the US dollar and how long it's going to last with this great awakening happening on the continent. Like you heard me mention earlier about the cacao going out to Switzerland from West Africa, but that happened for years until that great awakening, and they said no more. So we are at the precipice of that. That is our generation. It is our time. And so, I'm glad to bear witness and be here on the continent for that. So that is, I think, the beginning of a movement here. And this generation that came up with technology, who are well aware of, its benefits and its reach, and having access to all information at all times in that way, that means they won't be able to be easily persuaded. They won't be able to be easily pushed over, and not just by those who don't have our best interests, but even by their peers or their own parents. They have a certain level of critical thought, and I'm just glad to be here where I am and play the role that I'm able to play.
Okay. Well, I know you mentioned that you had an event to go to, and I don't want to hold you too long. So I just want to give you an opportunity as you wind down to share anything that you think is relevant right now.
Sure.
And then also, I've been so impressed by what you have shared with us that I definitely want to have you back on this program. I do another show on another radio station. It's a community radio station, and it's got a perhaps different audience, but it's us. Trust
It's
and
okay.
believe. And so
I'll speak to anybody.
yeah, we want to get the word out. I know you're here doing this city to city tour, and I congratulate you and hope all for success as you continue this journey. But anything that you'd like to share with us before you make that next move?
Sure. It was really nice to meet you as well, Nana. Your art is beautiful, what I can see behind you, and I'm going to look you up to see more.
Thank you.
Yes, it's all about intention for me. So even with your art, how can I utilize my art? How can I utilize this platform to address the needs of our people? Even this radio show or this streaming platform, how can I utilize this airtime? How can I utilize this platform to address the needs of our people? Because we have needs and they can't go ignored. And so I'm glad that both of you, have found a way to incorporate that. And I invite you both to be a part of the work that we're doing on the ground here on the continent in East Africa. I don't know how much time you spend in East Africa, Nana. But we plan to go all over. Teaching Artists Institute operates in 8 countries, 6 of which are on the continent. And we're going to soon add Rwanda. And so I invite you all to go to investinthekeepaland.com, familiarize yourself with some of the work that my husband and I have done and are doing. And, join us. Join us on the East African Investment Tour. It's happening in October. Join us here if you're in the States and you see that I'm coming to a city near you. I love to meet you. I love to talk to you. And, we can move forward from there. But we are building. We are growing, we are awakening, and the time is now.
Thank you.
All right. So well said, my sister. I'm just envisioning myself somewhere in East Africa being a part of this amazing tour and taking in the grandeur of
Yes.
what is Africa. It wouldn't be my first trip. I've been a few times, so I've had a good taste of it, and that taste of it is enough for me to want to come back.
Absolutely.
But I haven't been to East Africa yet, so that's definitely
Gotta come to the east. Gotta come to the east side
on my bucket list. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining me. We pulled this together at the last minute. I mean, literally down to the
we
wire.
pulled it together in divine timing.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
I believe.
I ascribe to the idea that the ancestors are working on our behalf.
Absolutely.
And all we have to do is ask for their assistance, and they are primed and ready to come to our aid. So I give praise to the ancestors. I want to acknowledge Nancy Nolan Jones, who is a sister in this community who held the doors of the African American Museum open for years. She had a battle with cancer, and so now she has joined the ancestors. There is a memorial service in progress right now to honor her life. So I just wanted to lift her name up and give her the praise that she is due. So with that, thanks for joining us, Swatara. And Brother Nana, if there's anything that you would like to share with us about things that you have going on right now, we did mention the fact that you'll be doing an exhibition at Larchmere Arts, and we'll do what we can to promote that, and it will begin in the month of October. But anything that you would like to share with us before we conclude the broadcast?
Well, just briefly, what I want to say is that thank you so much for this great opportunity also to be able to share what I know and my idea to the other, to the rest of all of us. Aside that, I think I'm challenging every African American over here to travel to Africa. That is my main objective. Try. It will change your mindset. it will change the way you look at Africa and also invest into African things, because that is where you're coming from.
All right.
That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. With that, thank everyone for joining us on 360 Info Network and Chapter 2, which occurs online on Facebook and YouTube, streaming live via StreamYard. We definitely appreciate your presence here. There have been a few folks who I've noticed have joined us, and we definitely appreciate you joining us. And, you know, folks will see this broadcast after it ends. So with all of that, as I always say, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace, everyone.